want to welcome everybody to tonight's webinar, which is a Greater Philadelphia ZOA, Pittsburgh ZOA, National ZOA joint webinar. I want to thank some of my colleagues who were participating tonight. My colleague Stuart Pavlak in Pittsburgh, who we'll be hearing from shortly. My colleague Alan Jay, who is our Director of Outreach and Engagement with National ZOA. He's working in the background, making sure this is a smooth event. I want to thank them both. I want to welcome our local leadership, our board members, officers, national board members and officers who are here, and other colleagues. My name is Steve Feldman. I'm Executive Director of the Greater Philadelphia chapter of ZOA. And again, I want to thank you all for being here this evening. Before we get into the meat of tonight's program, just an observation on my part. Tonight, we're gathered to discuss Jew hatred in Philadelphia and elsewhere in America. But I just want to make sure everybody is cognizant that equally important is we must do everything possible to try and avert the Biden administration from entering into a new Iran deal that gives a murderous regime tens of billions of dollars to perpetrate genocide and murder and unbridled terrorism, plus missile development and a free pass to develop nuclear weapons. It endangers Americans, it endangers everyone in the Jewish state of Israel, and it really is incumbent of us to try and devote some time and effort and advocacy to trying to call attention to this and the dangers, to try and muster an effort to make sure that there's not a new Iran deal. It's an existential threat to America and Israel. And now to our subject at hand. It's bad enough when an individual commits or incites Jew hatred, or when a media outlet does it, or when a university does it. But when elected officials, people in the government, commit or incite Jew hatred, when government agencies engage in it with that government imprimatur, it takes Jew hatred to another level and raises it to a significant danger. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Just a little bit of background. We at Greater Philadelphia ZOA were alerted to a problem in the Free Library of Philadelphia by a member, which in fact highlights the need for every one of you in the audience tonight and others to be vigilant and to alert ZOA when you see something that looks like it's could be harmful to the Jewish community. It's important to bring it to our attention at your local chapters, at the national level, when you see or spot a problem or concern. So that problem was brought to our attention, and it turned out to not be just one problem, but the tip of a very long spear. And as a result of our research into the activities of the library, and then the school district, and then the mayor and some elected officials got involved in anti-Jewish activities, promoting anti-Jewish movements, there really was a pattern. And we produced recently a 27-page report that documents much of that, many examples, much detail, and it also has advocacy items, suggestions to remedy the problems, and things we all can do to be vigilant and try and fight some of these efforts that are happening elsewhere, not only in Philadelphia. We are ZOA, and thus, as I said, the report does include remedies and action items. And it's this report and the broader issue of Jew hatred in America, which are the subject of our event tonight. I want to turn the program over to my colleague, Stuart Pavlak in Pittsburgh, ZOA. Stuart has been a Jewish professional for almost 30 years. He is celebrating his bar mitzvah year with ZOA this year. And as he notes, his heart and soul lies with the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Prior to joining ZOA, Stuart was involved with Israel Bonds for 16 years. And Stuart, I want to turn things over to you and thank you for co-hosting tonight.
Thank you, Steve. It's an incredible job that your chapter did in putting together this report on Philadelphia. And as incredible as the report is, it's just so overwhelmingly anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist, and Jew hatred all through the community and by public entities. It's just unbelievable. I read it twice, and I wonder, is this a coordinated effort on behalf of these entities, or is it just something that has happened. What's your thoughts on that?
Right. So thank you. So we're talking about, just so the audience is aware, because there may be some people who've not seen the report. We've sent it out by email a number of times, the link to see the document. But you're talking about elected officials. You're talking about the mayor of the city of Philadelphia. You're talking about elected members of Philadelphia City Council. You're talking about state representatives who represent Philadelphia and our capital of Harrisburg. You're talking about the Free Library of Philadelphia, which is a 57 branch system that is governed by a city agency. You're talking about the School District of Philadelphia, one of the largest school districts in the city. You're talking about some smaller city agencies. So while I don't believe that officials of all of those entities and the elected officials got together in a room and said, let's do this, there is a concerted effort happening in the same time frame to promote this anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel agenda with all kinds of activities, official observances, literature. I mean, you name it, it's happening. So like I said, I don't think there's a conspiracy, but there is an effort by agitators, by activists to get the city to move in this direction, and city employees who are willingly doing it, and in some cases doing it of their own accord without somebody nudging them to do it.
Well, recently, it was November 29th, 2021, that the mayor of Philadelphia and 3 council people, among others, were in front of an array of Palestinian flags, PLO flags, and the mayor declared it International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people. And at that time, some speakers took advantage of the opportunity to make further anti-Jewish comments, including Free Palestine and references to occupation. They're so supportive of these so-called Palestinians, but they don't seem to understand the difference or want to know the difference. What are your thoughts about having leaders of city government involved in that?
Well, people who are elected officials should be having a little more knowledge about the programs that they get involved in than the so-called average citizen. November 29th was a pivotal day because while about a dozen events had been happening or put on by the Free Library of Philadelphia during the last year, and while there were involvement in the School District of Philadelphia of organizations that certainly promote an anti-Jewish agenda, generally speaking, November 29th, rather, is when the mayor of Philadelphia issued an official proclamation, as you said, recognizing International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people, and I'll address what that means in a second. And city council members, 3 of them took part, 2 state representatives, 1 state senator, and as you said, they went beyond, recognizing that there is a Palestinian Arab community in Philadelphia, to use terms like end the occupation, etc. So the United Nations created International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people in 1977 on the 30th anniversary of UNGA Resolution 181, which partitioned the British Mandate of Palestine, what was left of it, into a Jewish state and an Arab state, which the Arabs referred to as the so-called Nakba, the catastrophe, to try to delegitimize the Jewish state and the Jewish people. The UN created this observance, and it has grown every year. And a number of cities over the last few years have had public events to observe this, Philadelphia being the most recent this past November 29th. Now, I saw on social media there were activists, agitators from the Palestinian Arab community who were agitating for this, who were lobbying for it. So again, it didn't just happen happenstance, but there are city officials need to be obligated to understand what this is all about, understand what they're endorsing, understand that there is a war going on, and that there are sides in the war. And instead of siding with the ally of the United States that is the victim of an effort to destroy the Jewish state and replace it with a Arab state of Palestine, these officials sided with the people who are supporting terrorists and who are supporting an end to Israel, and and claim, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I mean, the flag, and Alan, if you could put up the picture of the mayor at that ceremony that Stuart referred to, with all the PLO flags in the background. Those are PLO flags. I mean, they're erroneously called Palestinian flags, but that is the flag of the PLO, the Fatah party. And we know that so much terrorism and murder was conducted in the name of that flag. And I don't even know if the mayor is aware of what those flags represent, but there he is. And it's very shocking. That's Philadelphia City Hall in the background. The ceremony took place at the Municipal Services Building across the street from City Hall. It was a public event. The mayor's there. You can see in the background one city council member in the white coat and other people. So it was very problematic. Thank you, Alan, for that slide.
And Steve, I want to remind our viewers, and I think probably everybody is aware of it, but the choice of that date and the date of the UN voted on that partition, that was a non-binding resolution which never went into effect. And that date was chosen to further delegitimize the state of Israel.
Exactly. If the mayor, as someone in our community pointed out, if the mayor wanted to recognize the contributions of the Palestinian Arab people to Philadelphia, there is a significant population here.
How do I try and?
He could have picked any other, day of the year, but he chose November 29th to participate and pile on in this effort to delegitimize the Jewish people and the Jewish state. You're exactly right, Stuart.
I want to talk a moment about the public library and also the schools. What's going on with teaching young people is absolutely heinous. And I want to highlight a couple of points, and I'll throw it back to you, Steve. The library offered at its branches a resource list about Palestine and Palestinians. There had been about a dozen events going on at the library, and one of the listings on the calendar promoted virtual Palestine story time,
right?
Featuring an image of a notoriously anti-Jewish propaganda-saturated website named Teach Palestine. And the list of books for adults to read included many anti-Jewish activists, just a few: Edward Said, Angela Davis, and Mark Lamont Hill. And then there was another posting on Palestinian stories for young people with a teaser: what does it feel like to be a child living through war and displacement? And it further went on to give a short list of further resources, and consisted of more hatred, including the Teach Palestine and Palestine 101 for educators. And there was one question that in bold type: what do these words mean? Genocide, apartheid, ethnically cleansing, and racism. What did you find out about that, Steve? What were the implications?
Right, thank you. So there's a lot going on in what you mentioned. So in June, I think it was in June, I don't have the dates in front of me, in June, on the City of Philadelphia's Free Library of Philadelphia's main website, there was a teaser to a blog post on the library's blog soliciting empathy for Palestinian Arab children, as you referred to. This was immediately after Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad fired 4,400 rockets and missiles at Israeli civilian communities, causing post-traumatic stress disorder, all kinds of problems for young people especially, and no effort to solicit empathy for them. And this was the first item that was brought to our attention that led me to go see what else was going on. It seemed apparent that this was not just a one-off situation. And so there were a number of about a dozen of events. Many of them were these story times geared at young children with these big, richly illustrated picture books. So that first item, the blog item, had a tag in the blog post to Black Lives Matter. So they were trying to make this, and get the Black community involved and other minorities involved to join this effort against the Jewish people, which is known as intersectionality. And so they had these story times, and one of the story times, Alan, if you'll put up the next slide, please. This was posted by a librarian on the official. Alan, are you there? He's getting it. Okay. This was posted on the official Facebook page of a branch of the Free Library of Philadelphia. And I want you to take a read through this. It says they hopefully today's program and resources are helpful to caregivers and educators looking to teach about Palestine and center Palestinian voices, especially as Palestinians have called for a global day of action today. Now, why is the Free Library of Philadelphia promoting a Palestinian Day of Action? I mean, that's a little crazy. This book that is the subject of this the author has a website to their Instagram page, and there is a plethora of anti-Jewish postings on this Instagram page, including Jews of ethnic cleansing and genocide, and for children. This is all for children. It's targeting children. So a parent or a guardian leaves their kid in front of the computer because a librarian, a nice librarian, a friendly librarian is going to read a story and talk, and they get indoctrinated. They become haters of Jews, haters of Israel, haters of Zionism. Thank you for that slide, Alan. So, I mean, this is just one example, and this kept going on. There was another children's story hour that was focused on Palestinian cuisine, and the librarian, a different librarian, at the beginning gave a geography lesson just to orient the audience. And she said, Palestine is a country surrounded by or bordered by Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt. No mention of Israel. So she literally erased Israel from existence, replacing it with Palestine. And again, so this is for an audience of kids. And here's another slide. Alan, the next slide, please. Thank you. So this is another children's story time. This happens to be a book that has about a dozen chapters of situations around the world with people who are, refugees or allegedly oppressed. This librarian only selected one to discuss, the one about so-called Palestine. And again, so it says it's important to expose ourselves to a vast array of information and human experiences. That's true. But then she goes on, and Palestine and Palestinian people are not centered nearly enough. These true stories of Palestinian refugees living in a blockaded and occupied areas of their country will shed light on the distressing circumstances in which so many Palestinians live. I mean, why is a children's librarian promoting this narrative? And library leadership was aware of what was going on. We brought it to their attention. We had a meeting with library leadership, along with a couple other local Jewish agencies. They promised, thanks for the slide, Alan. They promised they would try and prevent this stuff from happening. To their credit, they did remove a couple examples, some of the most egregious examples of this, but many more events went up, and library leadership looked the other way as this was happening. So it's very deeply troubling. Starting on November 29th, which, as I said earlier, is a pivotal day, the library began promoting reading lists for teens and adults of anti-Jewish, anti-Israel authors. You mentioned Edward Said. and Rashid Khalidi and Susan Abdulhawa and a number of anti-Israel authors, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish books that the library is promoting. Now, I must add, during the course of the year, there was not a single program or activity for kids, for adults, that portrayed the Jewish people, the Jewish community, Zionism, Israel in a positive light. There was no balance whatsoever. So when you asked earlier if there was a campaign, in a way, yes, because it was one-sided, biased propaganda that the Free Library of Philadelphia was putting out there. Stuart?
Let me continue with that thought. I'll provide some information that you're already aware of, Steve, for our viewers. One quote from a video that a librarian had done is, children do see and hear what is happening, including the violence by Israel. It says, develop empathy for different cultures, people that otherwise see being oppressed. And they say that Zionism looks a lot like racism.
Yeah.
And it's important for adults to say it out loud. And we should be showing support for the Palestinian people, and especially with support among Black and Brown people. So it continues on. And there's one chapter, we talked about the partition resolution. It mentions that about dividing the area the British called the Palestine Mandate into an Arab state and Palestine, and a Jewish state, Israel. The UN resolution did not name either area by Israel or Palestine, and it goes on about the West Bank. So many of these people in Palestine are unable to move around freely, and that is distressing and demoralizing. I can't even imagine the pain and the fear, that sadness that Palestinians feel every day. I mean, Steve, it's just disgusting, the indoctrination going on for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, let alone young adults.
And targeting other minorities. I mean, we have to remember the Jewish people are minorities. When I say other minorities, they seem to be looking to pit other minorities against the Jewish minority, which is really demonic in a way. By the way, I just put a link in the chat for everyone, the link to our report. It's 27-page report. There's a lot of detail. There's action items, remedies. So please copy paste it if you can and take a look. But yes, Stuart, it really is, I think you can describe it as evil that these librarians, and again, management was aware of what was going on. They let these things go up. They looked the other way. They in a sense endorsed them by letting them up, by not removing them. They did remove one after we brought it to their attention repeatedly, but it's a problem. And throughout the last year, and we did some pretty thorough research, there were not this magnitude of programming, no propaganda or whatever you want to call it, involving any other group of people, no other ethnic group, racial group, what have you. It was a effort to really drive home to Philadelphians and young Philadelphians to this Palestinian Arab narrative, which was and is an anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist, anti-Israel narrative.
Well, Steve, that narrative continues to the young adults, because there's been a lot going on of pro-Palestinian and anti-Jewish activity in the public schools.
Right.
The Philadelphia School District has in-school relationships with 3 organizations that have a history of past, recent, or current or indirect promotion of these anti-Jewish themes. Muslim Students Association, Black Lives Matter organization, and Al Bustan Seeds of Culture. And they just are spewing toxic information about the Jewish people. What else can you add about the public schools to what I just introduced?
Other than, or I should say, in contrast to the library, the library, because of COVID, they recorded a lot of these videos for kids, these story times that otherwise we wouldn't have seen it. It was the silver lining, if you will, in the whole COVID pandemic situation to get a insight into what they were promoting to children. We don't have glimpses into what was going on inside the classrooms in Philadelphia. There are 2 Philadelphia high schools that have chapters of the Muslim Students Association, which overall, in general, has promoted an anti-Zionist, anti-Israel, anti-Jewish agenda, activities, events, etc. They had a national conference. One of the speakers was Linda Sarsour. It's a name all of you are familiar with. I don't need to really, go over who she is. So there you've got the MSA. You've got invitation into the school district of Philadelphia of the Black Lives Matter organization and programming. And there's a local group that bills itself as an Arab cultural group called Al Bustan Seeds of Culture that has created maps of the Middle East that they've omitted from, etc. Alan, if you could put up the next slide. This is the personal social media page of the faculty advisor to one of the Muslim Students Association chapters in a Philadelphia school. It's promoting a rally, Nakba 73. You can see the poster. There's the PLO flag, and then a bunch of armed people, with, I guess that looks like a Kalashnikov maybe, or an AK-47. It's too small for me to see, but clearly an automatic weapon in the front and other rifles. And I think I see a slingshot. This is a Philadelphia school teacher promoting this, no more settler colonialism, as you could see. Save Sheikh Jarrah, which is a phony effort to, again, demonize Jews and create a false sense of victimhood of the Palestinian Arabs. So this is a teacher promoting this. And is this left out of the classroom? We don't know. Are there students who follow this teacher on social media and see what she is promoting and are influenced by that? We don't know specifically, but we can't rule it out. Pretty much everybody in the audience of this event tonight was in school before there was an internet and before there was Instagram, and we couldn't track what our teachers were doing on social media. We didn't really know a lot about our teachers. Thank you for the slide, Alan. But nowadays, kids are on social media. They might follow a teacher. They might be influenced. And what influence does this have on young kids to see this violent poster, obviously claiming that Jews are oppressing and committing colonialism? And I want to point out when some people are quick to say, well, they're only talking about Israel, not Jews. I guarantee you, when the world reads or sees a report about Israel in the media, for example, they're not thinking about Israeli Druze or Israeli Arabs or Israeli Christians. They're thinking about Jews. That's who people think about when they think about Israel. So when people such as teachers or organizations demonize Israel, the message that is sent is demonizing Jews. It's inciting resentment. It's inciting hatred. It's important for us to remind ourselves of this and remind others of that. So Stuart, we don't have as clear a picture into what's happening in the school district of Philadelphia, but we know about the groups that they partner with or put children in close proximity to. And there's many examples of those groups' activities in our report, all based on screenshots, things that they themselves, these groups or people who are part of these groups, have posted on social media or on their websites. Everything we have that documents what's going on is from social media that these people or people who participate have put on social media. I mean, it's all there out in the open in a way, but nobody has been paying attention. And again, if not for someone in the community alerting us that there might be a problem, we wouldn't be aware of this either. So I really thank the vigilance of people in the community.
Well, I want to remind people that Nakba 73 wasn't like 1973. That was the 73rd anniversary of the creation of Israel.
Reestablishment.
And it's there's more than just a little connection between some of these teachers and what they're pushing in the classroom. At Northeast High School, the teacher is a Muslim student faculty advisor and an aggressive critic of Israel on her own website. Her Instagram page features things like Free Palestine, Save Sheikh Jarrah, and other things of that nature. And then they are promoting people like Angela Davis and was it Huey Lewis?
Huey Newton,
Huey Newton.
one of the founders of the Black Panthers from the 1960s. Alan, if you could put the next slide up, please. This is a mural in an elementary school in Philadelphia. Huey Newton, Angela Davis. Angela Davis has been anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist for decades and decades, and has only gotten worse. There is something that some of you are aware of, happens every year, mostly on campuses around the world, called, I just lost my train of thought. It's an effort to demonize Israel, Apartheid Week. It's Israel Apartheid Week. She has become one of the leading spokespeople endorsing that and trying to get people to participate in that. That's Angela Davis. So this is in an elementary school and a 5th grade class in Philadelphia. These two radical people were held up as role models, and there were activities for 5th grade students, those are 10-year-olds generally, to have these people be role models. Alan, if you could put up the next slide, please. This is Angela Davis with Rasmia Oda. Rasmia Oda was convicted of murdering Israeli Jews in terrorism incidents. So this is Angela Davis endorsing her. Rasmia Oda came to the United States by not declaring fully her criminal record in Israel. When it was learned, she was ordered deported, and Angela Davis was one of the people advocating for her to not be deported. This is a role model that is presented as a role model to 5th grade students. Next slide, please, Alan. Huey Newton and Yasser Arafat. Again, a role model for students. Now, it's not for us to tell the African-American community who their role models and heroes should be, okay? We don't want them telling us who our role models and heroes should be. But certainly there's got to be better choices than someone, I mean, look at the smile on his face with mass murderer and arch terrorist Yasser Arafat. There's got to be better role models. It's just deeply upsetting. Thank you, Alan. And I want to emphasize something. We've been talking about some books and events. We're not looking to censor. We're not looking to ban things. We want there to be balance. We don't want it to be just a continuous stream of propaganda that demonizes Jews and Israel and Zionism and lies about Jews, Israel, and Zionism. I want to emphasize, we're not looking to ban things, to censor things, but some of these city agencies, they just go too far in clearly trying to indoctrinate. Stuart.
Steve, I wanted to, before we talk about things that we can do, I just wanted to briefly mention about the city's soccer tournament. They called it the Unity Cup. And in 2019, they noted there'd be new teams that year, and there was a list, and the new teams included Iran and Palestine. So in essence, the city of Philadelphia was recognizing a supposed state of Palestine, something that our federal government and president hasn't done. So, okay, Steve, with that being said, what's the course of action? What remedies can our followers do individually, and what can they do to help you and other executive directors like myself when they see things happening in their community.
Thank you, Stuart. That's very important, because it's one thing to identify the problems, but we don't want to be powerless and say, you know, oh my God, this is terrible. This is the way it is. There's nothing we can do. There are things we can do. So the first thing we can do is get involved in and support ZOA. And I've just posted information about that in the chat. If you're in one of the areas where we have chapters, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Florida, please get involved in the local chapters. Please support the local chapters. If you're outside of those areas, please get involved in and support National ZOA. We need your support, financial support, involvement to help be our eyes and ears. There's obviously thousands of towns throughout the United States where things are going on that are not being monitored, not being addressed. So we need your involvement, and please jot down that information. It's in the chat, or copy paste it, and encourage other people also. So that's number one, is to support our work. Number two is to bear in mind that Jews are a minority, as I've said a couple times, and we need to remind people of that. What's happening to Jewish people by this government, by these agencies, would not be permitted to happen against any other minority. It just would not be permitted. So we have to constantly emphasize that. We believe there needs to be sensitivity training to city officials, to people who run government agencies, to city employees, just like there is sensitivity training about other minorities. So people are careful not to exhibit bias and prejudice. That needs to be happening with regard to the Jewish people as well. We are a people that, as everybody here knows, has been picked on, attacked for no good reason at all. And we deserve the same considerations as others, and we need to press for that. There needs to be more dissemination of facts of the history of the Middle East, the history of the Arab and Muslim war against the Jewish people, the history of the peace process, and what concessions Israel and the Jewish people have already made, tremendous conditions, what precautions the IDF takes before it tries to eliminate a terrorist threat. I mean, these are known things that we need to insist be shared. If they're going to be promoting anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist propaganda, they must also put out these facts, which are not propaganda. They're all verifiable. There needs to be policy directives from the mayor's office or some watchdog agency that to keep these horrible things from continuing and happening. There needs to be corrective materials. These library websites where some of the propaganda that you and I mentioned tonight, people were fed this stuff. There needs to be corrective materials placed in those very same spots. Just like when a newspaper makes corrections when it gets things wrong, the library needs to do that. The mayor needs to do that. There needs to be public apologies from the mayor, from the head of the library, from maybe the deputy mayor who oversees the library and the school district. Those employees who are doing some of this indoctrination deliberately with malice forethought to turn people against Jews, turn people against Zionism, they may need to be reprimanded. You know, again, it's happened to other people who've done this to other minorities. It shouldn't be any less when it comes to Jews being under attack. We need to be vigilant. It has to be called out by Jewish leaders. ZOA is one of the few groups that is publicly calling this stuff out locally and nationally throughout the areas where we have chapters. Unfortunately, a lot of the Jewish leadership, whether it's organization leaders, communal leaders, rabbis, are not calling this out for whatever reason. We don't know. Some people may think that there's greater success to be had working behind the scenes. We don't see any evidence that that really is paying off. And what concerns me, a lot of us are aware what's happening in the streets of New York, where Jews who wear Jewish garb or a kippot or a Star of David around their neck, for example, are getting beaten up in the streets. Something is inciting people to beat up Jews. We don't want that happening in Philadelphia or anywhere else. But if people are fed this constant stream of incitement and propaganda, somebody who is unstable is going to be triggered by that. It's only just a matter of time. We know about the violent attacks, God forbid, shootings, beatings, arsons, you name it. So there are things that we all can do, that ZOA is doing, that people can do individually, that other organizations could and should be doing. And we are willing to partner with anyone to draw attention to these, to try and fight these problems, to promote and even lead sensitivity training and fact sheets. We're willing to do that with anybody for the good of the Jewish people and really for the good of the broader community. So really, Stuart, that's where it's at. Do we have, I think we've got some time for some questions.
I just wanted to piggyback on a couple of things that you just said, Steve, and that is about getting our members, our families, our friends to, and other organizations, but we have control over our families and friends, that are suggestive control, that to let us know when these things are happening. Just recently, somebody in Philadelphia contacted Steve about something that was happening in Pittsburgh. And it was like, I found out about it the night before there was a decision to be made. It was just too late to make any connections. So it's important, we'll piggyback on the New York City, if you see something, say something phrase, but it is so very important. And I won't make another financial appeal as Steve has done, but we want to grow the organization. And the one thing that's holding us back is money, and it'd be nice to have some additional members. So, the old saying, please give and give generously. And, and if you can get new members to ZOA, that's almost as good as cash, because there are so many needs that we are aware of, but we are unable to meet those challenges for lack of support and personnel. So let's try to take a few questions, and I'm going to try to see what I can read here in the chat. And one question from Ruth Gray was, where does the IHRA definition come in this?
First of all, the city of Philadelphia has not adopted that. There are a couple competing definitions of Jew hatred. I have really gotten away from the term anti-Semitism, by the way, and I pretty much use exclusively Jew hatred. It's something that we need to try and reach out to the mayor about, but laws and directives, et cetera, are only as good as the authorities are willing to enforce them. So the city could adopt that and look the other way if teachers or librarians or other people continue this propaganda, continue these attacks. So that the IRA definition is a good start, but it's not really the end all and be all. It's step one. It's having that city or government embrace that, and then being able to say to the city, you've embraced this, you've said that these things are out of bounds, city agencies, city employees are engaging in them anyway, what are you going to do about that? So that really is the purpose of that. But if they're not willing to do anything, there's not too much we can do. Before we take the next question, and I hope that answers the question, I want to acknowledge one of our board members who's in the audience tonight, Larry Pitt. It was Larry's nudging. We did a report just on the libraries in the summer, and we needed to do a follow-up. There was a lot going on, and Larry was really the driving force in nudging me to really turn my attention to do that. And I really thank you, Larry, for your active involvement. It really is important.
I see Len Getz, a Philadelphia board member, has his hand raised. Please activate your mic, Len, and ask your question, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to tell you about my conversation with an executive at the Federation in Philadelphia. I spoke with him last week. I spoke to him because Federation was doing a survey, and I had missed the online survey, so he was kind enough to have a Zoom conversation with me. And after the survey, He asked me if there's anything, any comments you would like to make. And I told him, yeah, I'd like to talk to you about three things. I'd like to talk to you about the city officials in Philadelphia. I'd like to talk to you about what's going on in the libraries in Philadelphia and the schools in Philadelphia. And I talked to him about the event on November 29th, where the mayor stood up in front of a group of mainly Arabs with flags, and that the Israeli council from New York wrote to the mayor and asked him not to speak at this event because of what it represents. And so I asked him, where was Federation in the middle of all this? Where were they? Where was their stand? And he said, well, as Steve mentioned, we were working behind the scenes. I said, well, I'm not sure how good that is because this is a public event. Nobody's going to see what you're doing and what kind of effect it's going to have if you're working behind the scenes. And he said, well, we actually got some people fired in the city of Philadelphia because of their anti-Semitic statements. I said, well, okay, what about the mayor? How do we, right now, the mayor has proclaimed Philadelphia as recognizing this day of solidarity for the Palestinians. And he said, well, there were only 50 people, there's only a handful of people that were standing out there.
Wow.
And I said to him, it doesn't really matter. He's the mayor of Philadelphia.
Right.
He's out there, he's making a statement for the entire city. So it doesn't really matter how many people are there. It's an official statement from him. So I asked him, let me ask you this. You're a federation. You're the biggest Jewish community in Philadelphia. Can I suggest that you ask the mayor to come out with a clarifying statement saying that his appearance at this event does not mean that he does not support Israel, that he supports the Jewish state of Israel. He recognized their right to exist and recognize the right to live in freedom and security and in defensible borders. I think that's a reasonable question, a reasonable request from the mayor for Federation. And he says, yes, yes, he agreed, and he wrote it down. Whether we'll see anything about that, I doubt it very much. So then we talked about the libraries. Apparently, Steve, he did read the article. He did read the report.
That's interesting.
He had read the report, and I talked to him about the horrendous teaching that's going on in the libraries.
It sounds like more of you were interviewing him more than he was interviewing you.
Well, he was asking me the questions. I answered.
I know. No, I'm just, you know.
And then I went on with, but yeah, I guess you're in a sense, that's right. So I asked him about the libraries. He says,
Len, I must interrupt you a second because we are getting late on time. I need you to really boil it down because we had a few other people with hands raised, please.
So he said yes, he knew about the libraries. He knew, they said, again, he's working behind the scenes, behind the scenes, and he's working on it. And then he says to me, he says, well, you know, it's not every library who's doing this. There's lots and lots of librarians. It's only one or two, so it's not really a lot.
Oh my God!
I said, even if it's one, it's too many. And let me tell you something. They're on the internet. It doesn't matter. They're not reaching a handful of. They're not reaching a classroom. They're reaching thousands and thousands of people. They're reaching the whole world. If you're on the internet, the whole world can see it.
What a sad attitude. What a sad attitude.
His attitude was he basically minimalized it. It wasn't a big deal. It's only a few people listening. It's only a few people standing in front of the city hall. I got the impression it was not a major issue. It was a minor issue, and he minimized.
Thank you, Len. I want to give Len his just dues. He's a board member nationally and locally, and really one of the top activists in the country in terms of looking out for the Jewish people and Israel and Zionism. So thank you.
Thanks, Len. We're going to get to Noah Rubin here in just a second. I just wanted to say what, piggybacking on what Len just said, because there are so many Jewish organizations out there that are not doing what they are chartered or they were founded to do. And some of these organizations that we highly respect are not the be all end all. And ZOA has a habit of touching a lot of different things and trying to fix a lot of problems. And some we have success, some we don't, but at least we're out there trying and we're putting our foot in it regularly. We have a few minutes left. So
There's a
If you
few
have a
hands.
question,
Let's try and get to the questions as quickly.
Yeah. But just raise your hand. The yellow hand on the computer. Anyhow, Noah Rubin, I'll open up your mic and ask your question, please.
First of all, thank you for having us. My name is Noah.
I'm Brandon Mazicki. Thank you.
So thanks for having us. We are two students at the University of Pennsylvania, coming to you live from Penn Hillel. We're leaders in the Jewish community and also specifically in an organization called PIPAC, which is an independent pro-Israel organization where we do a lot of on-campus events to promote Israel and educate, and also we gather groups of students to lobby congressmen and also state officials and city officials. And so we saw a report.
We all owe you a thank you, by the way.
Well, we're very thankful for the report that you guys came up with. Obviously, the points that you brought up today were very scary to hear about. And so we definitely want to connect with especially the Philadelphia chapter and make a stronger connection with UPenn and the Penn Hillel. If you want to add anything.
Yeah, so, we really want to focus. We do a lot of national lobbying. We want to get into the state lobbying and the city lobbying. So this was a great way.
I look very much forward to working with you guys. If you registered, I've got at least the email of one of you, and I'll be in touch. And you should know, by the way, that the law school at Penn started a Muslim Students Association, and their goal is to drive a wedge between any programs that Penn does in Israel, and to prevent that from happening. That's in the law school now, so it's a problem. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm very touched by the fact that you guys are active doing this. It really means a lot.
I see there are two Pittsburghers that have their hands up. The first
and then our board chairman also, and then we're going to need to wrap up because
okay. I see that Steve Newstein has his hand raised. You want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
It's more of a comment, but I'd like to hear what your response would be. I think the biggest difference that we see in the traditional Jewish approach versus the Palestinian approach and the Arab approach is that we teach love and peace, and they teach and preach war and hate. And as long as that continues, those who are indoctrinated in the war and hate are going to continue to do it, and they're getting better at it, and more people hear about it. And we continue to preach love and peace and think that things will just go away and are afraid to say or do anything. So I think we have to stand up and be counted and speak up. And it's not enough to join, but you can't be afraid. Before the state of Israel, the whole purpose of the state of Israel is that it should never happen again what happened. And we can't forget that.
Thank you, Steve. I will jump to a board member from Pittsburgh, Lynn Silverman.
Hi. So first of all, I just want to say it's wonderful to see the two Penn students joining us tonight. I think we need more young people joining ZOA. And the second thing I wanted to say is I had sent these questions, I think, to you, Steve. Have you given your report to the candidates running for federal and state office in Pennsylvania? Because I would like to hear what their reaction to the report is. I'd like to get their responses so I know who to vote for. And also, has a complaint about the libraries and the public schools been referred to the Philadelphia Commission on Human Relations?
Thank you for your question. So what we are doing, not directly related to this, we have developed a questionnaire that we send out usually every 2 years when there's House and Senate races to candidates running for federal office, asking them their positions on various issues of concern to the Jewish community. ZOA is a nonprofit. We don't endorse, we can't endorse. We do post responses to these questionnaires, and we do let people know who do not respond. It is an excellent suggestion to include this report with those questionnaires this time, but we do not seek the opinions of people running for statewide, state office, governor, things like that. But I am sending a copy of the report to the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, who happens to be a member of the local Jewish community, to make him aware. So yes, and your second question, I'm sorry, forgive me.
About the
about
Human
Yeah, thank you.
Relations Council.
There was a situation in Philadelphia a few years ago where a Muslim school, there were videotapes of them teaching their kids songs about chopping off the heads of Jews and horrible things like that. And the Human Relations Commission did nothing. All right, so sure, we can expend some energy asking them and filing a complaint or whatever, but I really don't expect much. One of the problems we face, and we all have to be aware of this, is that you have so many misguided Jews who are involved in helping our enemies, enabling our enemies, siding with our enemies, sticking up for our enemies. And, I'm not a psychologist. I can't assess why, but it gives our adversaries and enemies cover. And to people who are on the fence, and we've heard something similar from members of Congress when we go down to Washington to lobby, you come in and say these things, another Jewish group comes in and says the complete opposite, and we're kind of in the middle. So one of the problems with going to the Human Relations Commission or other similar agencies is being undermined by Jews who, for whatever reason, work actively against the well-being of the Jewish community. I'll leave it as that. You can read between the lines. So it's a problem. So if and we're very taxed with issues and so we can't devote a lot of time. Our chapters are all on the small side. That's why we need people to volunteer and get involved. That's why we need people to donate and support our organization so we could do even more. The donations are the fuel that powers the ZOA engine. So, but thank you. Good points.
But I would like to get back to the first point, because I want to know who to vote for. I
can't tell you who to.
I know you can't tell me that, but you can tell me what their responses are
Absolutely.
in your report. And
Absolutely.
that would enable me to make an intelligent choice. And the other thing I just wanted to add is that, I think we have to remember Glenn Youngkin and the school boards. And I'm wondering if parents are even aware that this is going on in the schools and that this is going on in the libraries. And, look what happened in Virginia. Parents were cared about it. They care about what was being taught in the schools. And so maybe we need to get the word. I don't know how, I can't tell you how, but maybe ZOA needs to, spread the word to parents and school boards.
We do that, but we rely on people in the community who attend our webinars, who are active in our groups, to tell their friends, to tell their social media contacts. You have to help us get the word out. The people who are going to be influenced the most are your friends, people who who when you talk to them are not going to take 10 steps back. They're going to want to know what you have to say. So each of you, not just you, Ms. Silverman, are influencers in your own circle of family, friends, colleagues, the water cooler. We all have to do that individually. ZOA can lead that effort, but everybody else has to take a piece of that on their own small local level. Okay, we all have to take responsibility for that.
Okay, and Steve, we have one last question. I forgot.
Let's take a couple. Our board chairman in Philadelphia, national board chair member Mort Gleit has his hand up. Mort.
Okay, we can do those too.
You're on, Mort.
I just want to first of all congratulate you guys.
It's hard to hear you. Can you?
I wanted to congratulate you on this program. It was very good. I wanted to state that I took Steve on a couple of meetings to people at our synagogue, leaders in the synagogue. And even though they were not, basically on our side of the aisle, we had talks with them and they got, we convey whatever information. It's important to get out to these people, whether they're on our side or not on our side, I think.
For sure.
And tonight's program was excellent. And I think that Steve worked very hard to produce that book. He should be given a broad hint.
I'm just doing my job and helping our people. It's kind of you, but all of us at ZOA who work for ZOA are devoted to the effort to help our people, to help the organization, and my colleagues are equally active and do things in their own chapters or nationally, and all of the ZOA staff, all my colleagues, led by our national president, Mort Klein, are working tirelessly. And I mean tirelessly, although we are tired.
Thanks, Mort. Thanks, Mort. Who's the next person, Steve? I'm sorry.
Helen Wishnev has her hand up, and that might be the last of the night because
Okay.
we are.
Okay, she's a Pittsburgh board member. Helen, Aline, would you turn your mic on and ask your question? Aline?
Yeah. Hi, Stuart. Excellent program. This is the second excellent one I saw today, and I wanted to mention this to the college students over there too. I heard Eliza, oh my gosh, what's her name? Lewin, right, today.
Yes,
Did you see that? I don't know if you saw, but she was
No, we tend to not promote other organizations and ZOA events because they generally do not promote us in their events. So
Aline, we need to get to the question,
Okay.
please.
The point I was trying to make is though that at the end, she made a very good point. She said people don't really understand what was really happening in terms of anti-Semitism, that absolutely the new anti-Semitism today is Zionism. And she made a point of saying that we have to all stand up and very clearly define for everybody that Judaism is about a religion, a culture, a history, a nationhood, and Zionism is an integral part of Jewish identity, never to back off of it in any way. And I advise these boys to get in touch with her because she had a really terrific way of dealing with students. But I think we all have to remember that we have to, not back down at all. We say who we are, and that's what we are.
Thank you, Helene. And we want to thank everybody for attending tonight. If you would like to donate to the Philadelphia chapter, you can go to phillyzoa.org. Anywhere else in the country, just simply go to zoa.org.
And Pittsburgh ZOA, please plug your.
Well, they could do that through the national website. Okay. So I do want to, a couple people have thanked Steve already. It's an incredible job that he put together. He has the background of a professional journalist, so it might be a tad easier for him. And we talk about what we can do, and sometimes we just play too nice. We have to be a little bit more aggressive. And I would ask everybody, next time you see a webinar that you like, invite a friend, pass on the registration so we can get more people watching the webinars and being educated, because far too many people don't say anything. And that's the problem. It's a huge problem in the Jewish community in America. So with that, I thank everybody. Steve,
Hi, man. Don't go yet. I want to thank my colleagues, Stuart Pavelak and Alan J, for all of your help with this event. Stuart on camera tonight and leading the conversation, and Alan behind the scenes, and the work the two of you and some other colleagues and lay leaders did helping with this report, doing some proofreading and things like that, and good advice and consent. And I thank you all. Really is a team effort involving staff, lay leaders, volunteers, donors. We thank you all. We encourage you to keep supporting our organization with your activity, your dollars, and your moral support as well. So thank you all this evening. I wish you all a good evening, a Shabbat Shalom. Be well and safe, everybody, and have a good night. Thank you.